All right, got that going. Thank you, Hannah. Okay. All right, we'll just give it a few more seconds. Oh, yes, I can give you sharing capacity, Thomas. I have this share, but I'm happy for you to also share whatever you want to do. Let me try and figure that out.
Thank you, no worries.
No. Only takes however many years into virtual life to figure this out. Okay.
Just in time for them to change all the formatting.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, wait, hold on. And there's for time for everyone to. Well, I think if I make you. Multiple. Okay, I tried two things. Let me know if that's working. And if you want to share first, then you can get that started.
It looks like it is working, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, happy if you want to like kick it off, and then I can jump in.
Yes, here, let me get, we just have one more person coming to join. Okay, so my name's Coralie Toll. I'm part of the Southside Slopes Neighborhood Association Board, and we are hosting this DAM meeting. We will be having a presentation based on the proposed development, and then Thomas was going to start us off with a little bit of a presentation as well. We will have people joining kind of as we go, and then we'll have questions at the end. Is that about sound good?
Sounds great. Thank you, Coralie. All right. Great. So my name is Thomas. I'm a neighborhood planner with City of Pittsburgh. I cover the south side, so the slopes as well as the flats and in South Hilltop in Pittsburgh. So I'll share a brief overview of what a development activities meeting is, which we're here for tonight, and a little bit about the Registered Community Organization program. Appreciate the Slopes for hosting this as the local registered community organization. I know we have a lot of folks from the area joining tonight. So quick overview, city planning created the RCO program, Registered Community Organization program, back in 2019. This was a framework to help ensure that local community organizations can be a key source of input and channel the input about development projects that are of a big enough scale in their areas. And that helps ensure there's collaboration between the city and neighborhood groups. So what a registered community organization does is they help host the meetings in coordination with city planning when there are development projects of a sufficient scale in the area that they cover. They hold a specific formal status as being registered with the city. And so to do that, they have to maintain certain criteria around, for example, communication strategies that they pursue to make sure that community is informed of their projects and meetings, around transparency, a number of internal organizational standards and bylaws. And then there's also a biennial process where RCOs renew their status by demonstrating their completion of the different program requirements. So organizations are able to join the program as long as they meet all the different requirements and obtain a letter from the local council person, and that's available on a rolling basis. But the RCOs that are already established do a biennial renewal process. So you can go to City Pittsburgh's website. You Google City Pittsburgh, who is my RCO, you'll be able to come up with this website, and you can see a map of where existing RCOs are in the city. So the Southside Slopes Neighborhood Association serves as your RCO for the Southside Slopes. Nearby, for example, is Southside Community Council in the Flats. We've also got Allentown CDC in Allentown, for example, as well, and others. Development activities meeting, as I mentioned, when they're project of a big enough scale, it means that we convene the developer of that project, could be a private entity or public entity, the RCO, community members, the wider public, and the planning staff. and there's a chance basically for the developer to provide an overview of what they're planning to do, the types of community impacts that are expected, how they're considering the community in the process, and what kind of engagement process they have, as well as a chance to share kind of why they're going to a board or commission, what specific special requests they have that go beyond standard by right development processes, and then at the end of the meeting, it's a chance for the community groups community members and community organization, the RCO, everyone who's attending to be able to ask questions, to provide comments, provide feedback, and so you can do that in the chat or by using the raise hand function, and then the goal is for the developer to take that into account. I, as the neighborhood planner, will take notes for a staff report. That staff report is neutral. It just kind of takes a summary of what was said, and that helps so that then the board or commission that will then review the project has a clear understanding of what the community opinions are about the project and any kind of key points to have in mind and how the developer responded to those questions. So there's a 30-day comment period, 30 or more days after the development activities meeting that has to happen before that first board or commission hearing. And so that also provides time for, in case any folks didn't make it to the meeting, they can follow up directly with the RCO to provide their feedback. The RCO can consider providing that feedback as well, passing it along, or themselves taking a position if they so choose, to the board or commission that's reviewing the project. And then the project then does go to a public hearing or with the board or commission. So that could be with the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Adjustment, Historic Review Commission, or the Public Art and Civic Design Commission. So the types of projects that do trigger a dam, there's a number of them, some related to square footage, amount of, if there's enough new residential units, use variances, major projects, zoning map amendments, a lot of things. And this kind of whole list gives you a more comprehensive review of that. In this case, we'll hear from the developer tonight. What we've kind of initially heard from them is that because this is they are planning to do multi-unit residential, and if the zoning district is an urban industrial district, then that needs to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, specifically for the question around the standards that the Zoning Board of Adjustment has as a special exception for multi-unit residential in the urban industrial district, where related to the ground floor being residential. So they'll be able to talk more about that. But the fact that it goes to Zoning Board of Adjustment, plus the fact that it also is proposing over more than 4 residential units, 4+ new residential units, and is a square footage of new construction, and plus the parking stalls, 10 or more parking stalls, all those things collectively trigger the development activities meeting tonight. So for those who have kind of at the conclusion of the meeting, if you would like to provide further input on the project, you can go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment when they have the hearing on this. So here in this slide, you can see the link to learn more about the Zoning Board of Adjustment, find out about when they hold their meetings. They're typically held the first 3 Thursdays of the month. These are held in person at 412 Boulevard of the Allies downtown. They're in the basement conference room. They're also live streamed on YouTube, and then you can also join in virtually through a hybrid method. So if you want to provide public comment, you can email zoningboard@pittsburghpa.gov. An email testimony will be accepted until the business day before the meeting at 12 p.m. Usually, if you're also planning to testify, we encourage you to go ahead and provide an email as well to let them know you're looking to get on the testimony list. You can also send in snail mail to 412 Boulevard of the Allies, Suite 201, Pittsburgh, PA 15219. That has to get in 2 business days prior to the meeting, the Zoning Board of Adjustment. If you do come in person, then they'll guide you in person on how to provide your testimony. And similarly, if you're on Zoom, then you can use the raise hand function, or if you're calling in, then you can call in on your phone also to testify, and use the raise hand function by pressing *9. So that's kind of the detailed process for how to engage with the Zoning Board of Adjustment. if you have further comments after tonight, or for folks that couldn't join tonight that would like to comment on the project. So you can also find this information online at the website here. Quickest way to probably find is Zoning Board of Adjustment, City of Pittsburgh, if you put that in a search engine. But you can see the full link here. So we have other boards and commissions for when projects go to those. There's also processes to give feedback in that way. So that's kind of the quick overview of the dam process. Appreciate everyone's patience here. And I wanted to also acknowledge on the call, we have my colleague Scott Burson, who's a zoning reviewer. So in case we have very specific zoning questions that get in the weeds, he'll be available. He's a reviewer on the project. And then also my colleague Annie Deely, a neighborhood planner who's covers the Western Pittsburgh neighborhoods. She'll be joining and assisting me in taking notes. So with that, I'll pass it back to Southside Slopes and Coralie. You guys will be the kind of primary moderators tonight, but I'm happy to assist as well in moderation as needed. So pass it back to you, and then I know we have the presentation coming from the development team.
Let me get the screen reshared. Here we go. And let me get back on. Okay. So does somebody from the construction team want to take over for this? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and we can.
And you just let me know next slide, and I'll advance it.
Will do. Hi, so thank you for everyone for coming out this evening. My name is Jeff Campbell. I'm an architect and a principal at Rothschild Doina Collaborative. We're an architecture and an urban design firm located over in the Strip. We're also joined by Greg Gorman and Rocco Magrino, who are doing the civil and landscaping for the project as well from PVE. I think the developer unfortunately had a conflict come up. It looks like he was scanning the room here. It looks like he was not able to make it, but his name is Marty Gillespie, and he's of Laurel Communities. This is probably we've been working on this project for a little over a year at this point. Actually appeared or reviewed very briefly with the Southside Slopes, some on the development committee when we first started looking at the site, trying to understand, general constraints and general thoughts that there might be around the site. But we're happy to return now. This is, as Thomas is good to lay out, we are going to go before the Zoning Board of Adjustments looking for a special exception for the use, and we will touch on more on that in a moment. But this really is the first step that we're making in this process. This is the first public presentation we had for this project. Let me go to the next slide, please. So the next slide as it comes up is just an introduction to Laurel Communities. It's likely, if you've been around the city, you've probably seen some of the townhomes they've done. They are known for what I would say are relatively high quality townhomes. These are three particular projects that we've worked on as a team, being both Laurel, Rothschild Doina Collaborative, and PVE. We've done the work on all three of these, so I thought these would be great examples to share. So you see in the lower left, that's the Bakery Village townhomes over in Shadyside. Strip District Brownstones located, it's actually the produce terminal right behind it, which was a tough, challenging site, but very successful development. And then just breaking ground within a month or so is the Grandview Heights project, which is on Grandview Avenue up in Mount Washington. This gives you a sense of the type of townhomes that Laurel Communities typically makes. They do like to use high quality materials, likes to have a lot of light and glass and get some extra height. We will typically go to a fourth floor to get an extra amenity on the top floor, that type of thing. I will, share, because this is the first step, we actually don't have elevations yet. We really put a lot of care into making sure that we're designing projects to be contextual and make sure they look like they fit. And it takes a little bit of work in order to get there. Our first step, we wanted to make sure we were going through getting this special exception before we really invested a lot of time into the overall elevations of the project. So you'll certainly be seeing the overall site plan, but for the elevations, it will be in keeping with this, but we just haven't gotten to that particular stage yet. You can go to the next slide, please. And then the site itself, for those who aren't familiar, is the parking lot that used to be used for the hospital. So the Josephine Street, you can see on the yellow line just to the top of the site or the north of the site. There's the elevated rail line just north of that. We are bound, we go from 21st Street on the left to Greeley Street on the right, although there's actually a little bit of a parcel there that Greg will share in a little bit. And then we do have a slope directly behind us that goes up into the pump house. So this gives you a general view of where we're at. You can go to the next slide, please. And then this is just a more a close-up. That parking lot is almost exactly, if you're out there and you want to find the property lines, it's almost exactly where the where that existing parking lot is right now. So the paving sort of creates those property lines. And again, here we flip the view, but you can see that pump house in the back and that elevated train line and Josephine on the lower left-hand part of the page. Let me go to the next slide. And I'm actually going to hand this over to Greg now to kind of talk about some of the existing conditions and the site plan. Greg.
Thank you, Jeff. Greg Gorman, landscape architect with PVE, and as Jeff mentioned, we're the civil and landscape consultants on the project. You know, when we look at the existing conditions plan here, a few notable things. Jeff already touched on the context, you know, kind of around the periphery of the site here. The existing site has vehicular access off of 21st Street, shown plan left here. It's generally a flat site, at least where the parking lot exists. You know, it has this very gradually sloping bench from south to north, but it is buttressed on the southern border by very steep slopes that go up to the neighboring property, which is owned by the city of by PWSA, and for one of their large pump stations. And related to that, you'll see the two blue lines bifurcating the site there. Those indicate some large transmission lines that run through the site, you know, and are kind of critical infrastructure for PWSA. And we've had very close coordination with them to understand exactly where those lines are, how deep they are, and as you'll see when we get to the site plan, how we've developed the site to make sure that we've minimized any chance of impact and maintain the ability to access and service those lines in the future should there be a need. The site has public sidewalks all along Josephine Street and a portion of 21st Street. And in addition, some other notable site elements, there's a Columbia Gas Regulator Station building. If you're familiar with the site, you've probably seen this cinder block building along the front there. That's a piece of Columbia Gas's infrastructure that helps with their gas distribution through the south side area. With that, we can jump to the next slide, please. All right, so here's a rendering of the proposed development. There are 38 total residential units proposed, divided into 5 separate buildings. Buildings A and B are fairly standard rear-loaded townhome units. Would be 6 units in each building. Building C are front-loaded townhome units. All of those accessed via the proposed private drive, as you can see, with an access point from similarly located to the existing entry to the parking lot on 21st Street, and then a proposed new additional curb cut onto Josephine Street. As we move east on the plan, we have buildings D and E with 10 and 6 units respectively. Those are also rear-loaded townhome units. They're kind of a front and back configuration, meaning that you know, you have units that the living spaces primarily are arranged on the front side of the building, whereas an additional unit is located on the rear side of the building. And on the first floor is kind of split with single car garages associated with each of those units in each building. So as I alluded to, each of the units has at least a single car garage. Those would be in buildings D and E, and then buildings A through C all have proposed to have 2 car garages. In addition, off-street parking is provided on the surface behind buildings D and E that would accommodate guest parking or additional resident parking as may be needed in accordance with the zoning requirements. In addition, we have ADA accessible stalls located adjacent to building E. Those stalls have an accessible path that lead to the front of building E. The grading is strategically planned such that we have accessible entries in the entirety of building E as well. The center of the plan, there's a shared loading space to accommodate deliveries that may be required for the development, and as well as move-ins, move-outs, things of that nature. Have a well-developed pedestrian pathway on the community campus here. But in addition, there are proposed improvements to the public right-of-way with replacement and improvement of the sidewalks along 21st and Josephine Street. In addition, a new curb cut and crossing proposed at the intersection with 22nd Street. You can see that there with the dashed lines indicating the location of the proposed crosswalk. We have had a pre-application meeting with DOMI, and we have these plans in for review and comment from DOMI as well currently. I mentioned the curb cuts and the configuration there. With respect to 21st Street and Josephine Street, as noted, the 21st Street is similarly located to its existing location. The Josephine Street provides multiple functions beyond just access for the residents. It also accommodates larger deliveries, fire access and egress, as well as, fire apparatus access and egress, as well as refuge collection. Other improvements proposed for the site would be lush landscaping, a modest lawn recreation area on the far east side that would likely accommodate a dog park for the residents. The project actually provides a reduction of existing impervious area from the parking lot of about 13,000 square feet. And the gas regulator station that was mentioned previously that's along the front edge currently of Josephine Street is proposed to be moved to the back side of the building. That's that rectangular structure that we see behind building D. The impacts as far as grading to the site would be fairly minimal from the standpoint of a development of this size. Generally, the site grading strategy plans to maintain the existing bench that exists. Grading would be within approximately 3 feet plus or minus of existing grade at any point on the site. And there are no proposed impacts to the steeply sloping topography on the rear of the site. So the grading would come up and meet that existing toe of slope that we see along the southern property edge. As noted previously, we will be seeking a special exception for the proposed use of multi-unit residential per this district and its standards. And it notes that all residential units may be limited to floors above the ground floor of the building when residential uses are not desirable on the ground floor. So I think that's fairly broad, but I think when you consider the adjacencies of this development, within half a block, there are 13 townhomes to the west on Josephine Street that are very similar in character and style, all with ground floor residential space there. We see along Greeley Street, dense street front multi-unit residential properties immediately to our southeast, and within a block and a half to the east on Josephine Street, we have additional townhome or townhome row home style housing. So it certainly fits the context of the neighborhood here. So beyond that, we feel that this really represents a nice improvement for the community in terms of the social and economic value that it would provide, as opposed to the existing vacant parking lot. So if you would, jump to the next slide, please. And this is kind of just a summary of some of the points that we were discussing here earlier. I apologize, I didn't catch it until shortly before this meeting, but we are proposing 38 units. This note's 28, but there are 38 per the plan that we had shown on the previous slide.
If I can jump in there, because I did this and I have to apologize. There's 2 mistakes on this page. That's one. So instead of 12 townhomes, it's 22 townhomes. And then for covered spaces, instead of 40 spaces, it's actually 60 spaces. So I apologize for throwing you off.
Thanks, Jeff. So I think that really encapsulates kind of an overview of the proposed development here. And, we're certainly interested to hear what the community has to say and respond to any questions that you may have at this time.
All right. If we have any questions, if you'd rather put them in the chat, I can relay them, or I have some hands raised. Let me unmute these people. Okay, let's start with Jackie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Thank you for the presentation. Could you go back to your site plan and identify which of those buildings and how many units are in each segment of building? Because I think that's where people are getting a little confused, and maybe you can call those out one more time, please.
Sure. Yeah, it may be helpful to zoom in a little bit here.
Let me see. Can I zoom in? Oh, no.
Okay. Well, I can just talk. I can just speak to it as well.
Sorry. Let me get back to it. Okay, here we are.
Right. So let's start in the top left corner here. At building A is 6 rear-loaded townhome units. Building B, also 6 rear-loaded townhome units. And directly behind those, we have building C, which would be 10 townhome units. Those would be front-loaded units. And then building D is a 10-unit rear-loaded building. That's a slightly different configuration of floor plans than we see in the townhomes, but similar in terms of size. And building E is a 6-unit, and again, the same alternate configuration that we see in building D as far as floor plans.
Right, and so the units themselves are single family units.
That's correct.
Okay, so 6 single family, 10, 10, and 6. Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
And then there's a question about rear loaded versus front loaded. Is that like
I had another question.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
So in addition to those counts, can you point out which ones are considered townhomes and which ones are considered stack townhomes, and then give a definition of each? And also talk to us a little bit about height restrictions here and what the proposed heights are of each one of these buildings. Thanks. I'm going to go on mute now.
Sure. Yeah, happy to respond to that. And Jeff, I'll take a stab at this, and if you can add some more detail, please feel free. Right. So, certainly the units are all proposed to be within the allowable maximum height here, and that in this zoning district would be 60 feet. So we certainly would not be exceeding 60 feet or 4 stories. So, and we're and Jeff, could you touch on a little bit of the with respect to floor plans and the nuance between the what we would call, what we're calling the standard townhome versus the stacked unit?
Sure. So the buildings A, B, and C are a standard townhome. So, you know, it might be helpful actually if we could go to that second page that has the pictures of the townhomes. I can maybe answer two questions at once. So the second, if we could slide up to that second page.
Oh yeah, sorry. Got it.
That's right. So these are what I would call traditional townhomes in their layout. So they are typically,
Here.
one more, there we go. Typically 3 stories or 3.5 stories. So if you look at the Bakery Village in the lower left, that's what we call a front-loaded townhome. The front-loaded is where the garage is. So if you have a garage that comes in through the street that the building is facing, it's a front-loaded, as you see there. The Strip District brownstones, and actually the Grandview Heights as well, are rear-loaded in that the garage is to the rear of the building. So what we're proposing in Josephine would be everything that's along Josephine would be a rear-loaded townhome, or the stacked townhomes. The rear-loaded townhomes, so that'll preserve the sidewalks all along the front there. So you can see their buildings A and B are all rear-loaded townhomes, and then building C, you know, the only way to do a rear-loaded townhome in building C would be to create a whole other drive in the back, and that didn't make sense for this particular site. So we actually have, in this case, we have front-loaded townhomes on building C. So those would be more like the layout that you see on the Bakery Village. And each one of these is, like I mentioned, it's they're between 3 and 4 stories. A lot of times it's an owner option. If they'd like to have a terrace on the top floor, then they will typically do a half floor that has a terrace on that. So that counts as a full floor. So that does, if they choose that option, it becomes a 4-story building. And roughly, you know, we're around 40 feet as the city defines the building height definition. And as Greg mentioned, we can go up to 60 feet. Now, the building D is a little more complicated in that this is a different concept where these are townhomes, but there's a townhome in the front and a townhome in the back. And these are plans that are still being developed, unfortunately, so I don't have any to share here. But effectively what happens is that there's a single car parking for every unit. So, and that's all rear loaded. So all the driveway goes in the rear, and a car can park into the unit from the rear into every unit. And then that unit will either extend up, all those units extend out to the street in, you know, a 10 to 12 foot wide area. And then some of the units will go up 3 stories in the back, some will go up 3 stories in the front, and now they're double the width there. So relatively complicated concept, but it's something that I don't believe it's been done. I haven't seen it done in Pittsburgh yet. They've done this a lot in DC, and we've got some good precedent. So we're working on.
So they would not necessarily be to 3 to 4 stories high because they're sharing that a little bit.
Correct. They would end up being a full 4 stories.
Okay, but the building would be a full 4 stories, but not each unit.
Each unit would actually, because each unit would have a garage on the ground floor and a small space up front, and then 3.
Okay. Oh, I think I see that. Okay. All right, so let's move through some more questions if we feel like that. We'll start with Fritz.
Yeah, thank you. Great overview. It'd be great to see something come out of that parking lot. I guess my question is, I mean, it sounds like you're going to stick to the existing footprint of the existing parking lot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then would this be like an open design, or would this be a gated community?
It would be open. Yeah, it's not a gated.
Okay, great. Those were my 2 questions. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. And then Bob.
Yeah, hey. So just very quickly, I have been working with Marty and came in kind of through this process here. I'm really glad that this is where you landed. I know that there have been a ton of challenges although this looks like a parking lot to most of us, it's a utility nightmare. And I'm really happy to see that this is the end result, and we are able to see something come out of that. Are there any images you have of what these stacked units look like? I have had trouble kind of understanding what they are from the get-go here.
We're working on it, and we may be. What I can do is I can speak to Marty and see if we can get something released, well before our ZBA hearing.
Not even like what you're proposing, but just like this is what the stack units in DC look like, or something,
Right.
something like that,
Yes, I'd be. Let me approach him, and I'm sure we can get something around here.
I don't need to pick apart the aesthetics. I'm just trying to visualize like.
I guess, again, sorry, as we pick it apart. So it seems kind of in that stack, like about half of them have what would be an egress on the Josephine side of things, and that's why they connect to the little sidewalk there.
Yeah, they actually share an entrance, so it's
Oh,
I wish we had a better graphic for this. Would you, if you could, I don't know how far you can zoom in there.
I don't even know how to zoom in at all, just because.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
See, if you'll actually see 5 boxes off the sidewalks there.
Yeah,
And-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes.
Right. So each one of those is actually is a shared entrance, and then you can go right or left from there.
Okay. So this is a shared entrance, what I just circled. Okay, if that helps anybody else visualize. I still don't quite get it, but that's okay. Okay. Any other questions, Bob, or comments?
Well, yeah, sorry. One
sorry.
other question I wanted to get to there, and I know that the green spaces are very intentional with the utilities there. Can the lawn on the end on the Greeley Street side? I mean, is the plan for that just to be a lawn? Is the plan to put dog space there?
I think they had mentioned possible dog park.
Yeah. But what our developers told us, and what he's seen is that his typical client, the typical market rate for these is there's always a high demand for a dog park, so that's the primary intention for that use space. What I can also mention, what you don't see on this plan is that's a fairly significant utility corridor to service this development as well. There will likely be a water meter pit vault there, underground sewer and electrical connections in that area. So it's limited in what we could do, physically in that space, but it does provide an opportunity for a recreation space, and in this case, intended use of a dog park.
Okay, yeah, I would love to see a dog park there. That's cool.
Would that dog park be open to the public? Probably not.
No, I wouldn't anticipate that, given there would be a homeowners association here that would be responsible for maintaining and caring for it. So private.
Private. All right. And then moving for sorry, Bob, anything else?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Natalie.
Hi. I was just hoping that you could go back and explain a little bit. You were talking about how you're seeking a special exception for proposed residential use on the ground floors. And I'm curious, like, what that's the exception to, and like, would it be commercial space otherwise?
Right. So this zoned as the UI urban industrial district. Commercial industrial uses would be permitted within this area as well, but residential multi-unit is permissible via special exception for this district.
So in the zoning, you're not proposing to change the zoning, but just to get a special exception to build this proposal. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we're seeking special exception per the standards provided by the code.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Certainly.
Any other questions? Natalie? If not,
Oh no, I'm okay right now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. Mike. I think I'm. Mike McKay, did you have a question?
Yes, I couldn't figure out how to unmute.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Two questions. I see that there's like a pair of stairs off of Josephine Street, like 4 times. That elevation changes that much that you'd require stairs up onto that common walkway?
Yeah, that's correct. And in fact, that's the existing condition on the site as well. If we could jump back to the existing conditions slide for a moment.
Right
and
here or this one?
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
fine actually there.
Or-
You know, if we look at either is fine.
Sorry.
Excuse me, sorry. At the intersection of Josephine and 21st Street, there's a stair section. Yeah, exactly right there. Right.
Sorry.
That helps accommodate
Sorry.
that. You know, there's about a 3.5 to 4 foot elevation change that occurs from the sidewalk on Josephine to the immediate edge of the parking lot that's adjacent to it. So, you know, again, the intent here is to maintain that existing bench that's down there on the site and have kind of a, you know, level space, you know, utilize that existing level plateau that's there. And so stairs are necessary to help us accommodate that grade change from the public sidewalk up to the front entrance of those buildings. So, and then there is street parking there as well, so that, you know, we go from, you know, what was one point of access previously to the sidewalk to, you know, 4 points of access in the case of Josephine Street.
Okay. One other question was, I guess initially Walnut Capital owned this property, or do they still own it? And where's the connection between you guys and Walnut Capital?
As I understand, Walnut Capital is in an ownership, does have ownership in the site. But as far as the specific terms of, you know, their involvement in this development, I'm uncertain. That would be, unfortunately, a great question for the developer who's not present this evening.
Okay, so Walnut Capital owns it, but you guys may be the ones that are developing it.
Just to clarify, we are consultants for the developer, Laurel Communities. So that would be correct. Laurel Communities is seeking to develop this project. We are consultants for him.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. You're welcome.
All right. Jackie, you had another question?
Yes, yes. So thanks for the presentation. You know, we always welcome development in the neighborhood, especially responsible development. And I know this is step one in multiple steps to come. The variance you're requesting is what triggered the dam. So going down the road here, since this is a sort of zoned UI, right? You can almost do anything by right. What's going to be the community input on the aesthetics of the building going forward? Because I don't know, and Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably won't need another dam unless you go for some other variance within the site, correct?
Probably not, yeah, unless there's a change in the board commission requests. I mean, there can be a situation where if there's this big enough shift in kind of what the project is proposing, that also could trigger it, another dam. But certainly, you know, the community is also welcome to advocate for the developer to come back for at least an informal presentation.
Right.
The setting to present
Yeah.
that.
So I just want to make sure everyone realizes that there's no other requirement for them to come back and show us what they're building. So, you know, I'd encourage the Slopes Association and anybody else to work with the developer to build that relationship so we could see what their design is going to be, both from the floor plan and from the elevation perspective, which will, you know, end up in our neighborhood. Thank you.
I do suppose, given that the developer wasn't able to be here tonight, it would be reasonable to say that it would be nice to have another even informal meeting with the developer present for some of the questions that, you know, they would be more specifically able to answer, if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, so the slopes are going to have to advocate for that
Yeah.
with the developer in Walnut Capital. And,
Yeah.
you know, if the community council can add any support on that or anything else, please let us know.
Yeah. So something to think about. All right. Do we have any other questions?
I have two quick process questions for Thomas and Scott. So, I mean, because of the size, we are coming back for planning commission. Is that correct?
Don't believe.
Scott, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, I don't believe planning commission has a trigger in the UI district here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, multi-unit is permitted just straight up with the special exception here. This does need to go to design review, and they could send it to
The
contextual, CDAP, contextual
Right.
design advisory panel. But as you said, I know you're still developing the elevations.
Yeah, and we certainly have nothing to hide. I was just trying to figure out a process to share that with the community. But you know, as I mentioned, one of the challenging things is that we do want to get through the special exception process before we start to invest heavily in that design.
Right.
So I mean, we are happy to share, and I'm sure, yeah, I can't speak for the developer, but I would think that he would be willing to come back, you know, that we could share elevations once we're there.
We definitely, from city planning, always strongly encourage, you know, frequent engagement with the community and updates as it progresses. So appreciate your openness to that.
And again, I need to review that with him, but
All righty.
And then actually, sorry, the other process question was, there's a question in the comments, and one thing that did come up was just understanding the nature of this stacked townhome. If I can come up with some images, can I post that through Southside Slopes, or is there, you know, a way to get it to the people in the meeting right here?
Yeah, so we could either, I mean, again, if anybody else from the board can hop on, we can do an email blast. We could share on social media if you all were okay with us sharing that, including Facebook and Instagram. So we could share it through our portals if you were able to connect it with us. Yeah. And then, yeah, you could email it to I think you had been emailing with us already,
Right.
Jeff. So yeah,
Okay.
you could email it there as well.
Be happy to.
And trying to think, anything else? Mike had another question.
Yes, when I'm looking at the plan view that shows the units and everything, there's two notes there on the south side that say about existing 14-inch something tree and existing 24-inch tree to be removed. Is it just two trees being removed, or because there's a heck of a lot of trees there, but why those two particular?
Right.
They're being called out.
Yeah, they're close to the proximity of, you know, the root zone of those trees are close to the proximity of the units that are being constructed or the paving and adjacent to that area. So their potential health would be compromised, or if there's some minor grading occurring in that area. So as part of zoning requirement, the environmental design standards within the city, any tree that's existing that we remove that's at least 12 inches in diameter or larger would need to be replaced in kind by a total number of trees equal to the diameter of that removed. So as you can see on this plan, there's quite a few trees that are proposed to be planted, and they're doing a number of things, but primary among those is making sure that any trees that are being removed are being replaced on site.
Okay. All right then. Thanks.
You're very welcome.
All right. Any other questions at this time?
I'll just note again that, yeah, if there's, we'll double check this with, you know, our zoning administrator too, around the question of, you know, what exactly would potentially trigger like a requirement for a second dam. and because we recognize there's not elevations tonight, there's not some of the detail that the community would like to see. It is pretty uncommon that it requires second dam, but again, we'll get back to you on that, to the developer on that, and to the slopes. But yeah, in any case, thank you for considering at least coming back to have another meeting.
Okey-dokey. Thomas, is there anything else you need for tonight, or anything else we need to go over?
Oh, I think thank you everyone for coming. Thank you the development team for your presentation and everyone's really excellent questions. And I'll be sure to take note of this for the report that goes to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I'll note where there were ongoing questions and items for follow-up. And yeah, hoping that I think there's an already sounds like the development team has Southside Slopes email as well. So if there's those kind of examples that you were looking at for forwarding some photos along, that hopefully that can be coordinated.
Once we get those, we will share those. And then I did actually have that. So the Natalie's asking if there's a way to access the presentation after the meeting. If we were to be able to include this in an email to those on our listserv, is that okay, or would that not be shared that way?
Are you asking us?
Yes.
Okay. The only thing I would say is let me fix those two mistakes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe if you want to give us an updated one.
Yeah.
And then this meeting was also recorded, and so that will be accessible on our YouTube as well. So that's an option as well.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Oh, yeah, and just a general reminder, folks can continue to provide input at the Zoning Board of Adjustment hearing or in advance of that. And for the slopes, do you all have your you listed your email address for folks to reach out?
Yep.
Okay. And then do you guys have a Zoning Board of Adjustment date yet, Jeff?
I think we're tentative for April 3rd.
And I think that was on the presentation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. All right. Yeah, thank you all.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a good evening, and feel free to reach out via the multiple avenues that were highlighted tonight. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Thank you.